In the red-dusted village of Kigundu, nestled between the dry hills and whispering acacia trees, lived a girl named Nana. She was born on the hottest day of the year, in the shadow of grief. Her mother, Adisa, had just lost a son, her only son, to a fever that no herbs could tame. Nana was born 2 months later, screaming and healthy, as if defying the silence her brother left behind. But to Adisa, Nana was not a blessing. She was a betrayal, a living wound dressed in soft skin and bright eyes. Each time Nana cried as a baby, it felt like a ghost wailing through the walls. Each time she laughed, it sounded like a mockery of the silence left behind. Adisa could not bring herself to touch her with tenderness, because every breath Nana took reminded her of the one who no longer breathed. She had labored through her grief, not her hope. And when she pushed Nana into the world, she didn't feel joy. She felt robbed twice, once by the fever that took her son, and again by the universe that replaced him with a girl who would never carry his name, or his legacy, or her broken dreams. "You came to take what I loved," she would mutter. "You came with death's smoke on your heels." To others it sounded like madness, but to Adisa it was her truth. She didn't hate the child for what she was. She hated her for what she wasn't. "You came to take what I loved," Adisa would mutter. "You came with death's smoke on your heels." Adisa's hatred was not only just born of grief, it was also layered with bitterness. She had once been the most promising girl in her village. She had won school prizes, impressed teachers, dreamed of becoming a nurse. But she gave it all up to marry Mosi, who was poor then, but kind. They had a son, and for a while, she believed that was enough. When the boy died, it was not just her heart that broke. It was everything she had sacrificed. And Nana, full of potential, smart and curious, was a mirror of the woman Adisa had once been, and the life she never got to live. So she punished the child for it. She never held Nana with softness, never braided her hair, never sang her lullabies like she did for the boy. While other girls were wrapped in their mother's warmth, Nana was sent to sweep, to scrub, to keep quiet. Her questions were met with slaps, her tears with cold eyes. And yet, in the same house lived Mosi, Nana's father. He was a quiet man, a carpenter whose hands smelled of wood shavings and resin, whose voice was barely louder than a cough. He rarely interfered in his wife's anger. The village thought him spineless. But Nana noticed things. She noticed how every time her mother tossed her a torn dress, her father left a mended one by her mat the next morning. She noticed how food would appear on her plate after Adisa stormed out in rage. How books, English readers, old maths leaflets, poetry in faded ink, appeared one by one under her bed wrapped in banana leaves. "Your hands are clever," he once whispered, as he passed her a small notebook, worn and precious. "Use them. Learn." Nana worked hard. She rose early, sweeping the compound before the sun even touched the rooftops. She finished chores with quiet hands and quick feet, then stole moments for herself, books tucked under her arm, questions swirling in her mind. Her favorite place was the mango tree behind the house, its branches arched like arms, sheltering her from the world, and beneath it, she carved out her own kingdom of thought. That's where she studied, cross-legged, tracing her fingers across borrowed pages by sunlight, and by moonlight when necessary. And her father was always nearby. He never said much. Words to him were like nails, used only when needed, and never wasted. But his actions spoke a language Nana learned to understand. He'd carve stools and pestles beside her, the steady rhythm of his knife comforting in its familiarity. Occasionally, he'd slide a roasted groundnut toward her without looking up, or refill her lamp when it flickered low. When her book bag tore, he stitched it neatly and left it by the door. When she outgrew her shoes, he sold a carved headboard to buy her a new pair, pretending, of course, that someone had left them by mistake at the market. He never defended her loudly when Adisa shouted, but later that night he would tap gently at her curtain and murmur, "Sleep well, my daughter. You are doing fine." Once, After she passed a tough exam, she found a small, carved box under the mango tree with her name etched on it. Inside was a beautiful pen and a note on rough paper that simply read, "You have your own voice, write with it." She kept that box for years. From her very first day in school, Nana stood out. Not because she was the loudest or best dressed. She was neither. Her uniform was always a bit faded, and her exercise books were often second-hand, with torn covers and someone else's name scratched out. But her eyes carried questions, and her mind refused to rest until they were answered. In primary school, she sat at the back, quiet but alert. While other children whispered or giggled during lessons, Nana listened. She copied notes neatly, double-underlined her titles, and memorized everything she could. When she didn't understand something, she asked the teacher after class. Always polite, always humble. Some laughed at her hunger to know more. Others called her a teacher's shadow. But her teachers began to notice. They started slipping her old textbooks, extra practice sheets, and in return, she swept the classroom and sharpened pencils every morning. At home, her mother saw her books as a waste, often tearing pages in anger when chores weren't finished fast enough. But her father, Mossy, noticed the tears Nana tried to hide. He began waking earlier to milk the goat so she'd have time to read before school. He repaired her sandals with scrap leather and carved her a wooden ruler with her name etched faintly along the side. He never said much, just nodded in approval when she scored high marks or left her a sweet potato by her bedside during exam week. By the time she reached Class 8, Nana was among the top 3 in the district. Her head teacher personally walked to her home to speak to her parents. "This girl has something rare," he said. "If she's allowed to continue, she will go far." Adisa folded her arms. "And who will cook, sweep, carry water? Books won't fetch firewood." But Mossy simply asked how much the school fees would be. High school was tougher, both academically and emotionally. She was admitted to a county boarding school several hours away. Her mother refused to escort her or pack her belongings. The night before she left, Adisa dumped her clothes in a sack and muttered, "Go if you want. When you fail, don't come back crying." That night, Mosey sat with Nana under the mango tree. He handed her a small cloth bag. Inside were coins, a hand-carved pen holder, and one of his best chisels wrapped in cloth. "I sold the rest," he said quietly. "Fees, transport, and a bit extra for books. Don't waste it." Nana wept. He didn't tell her to stop. At boarding school, Nana studied harder than ever. She made friends slowly, helped clean the dorms to earn respect, and borrowed textbooks from older girls. She used holiday breaks to tutor primary school children for a few shillings and sent most of the money back home, even though she knew her mother wouldn't care. She passed her Form 4 exams with distinction, top 5 in the country. Her name was printed in the national newspaper, though Adisa ripped the page and used it to light the cooking fire. But Mosi found a copy in the market and tucked it inside his old wooden toolbox next to her first spelling test and the ribbon from her Class 8 graduation. When Adisa saw it, she screamed, "So you'll ruin her too?" Mosi only bowed his head and returned to his workbench. Nana, with support from her father, went on to join a teacher's college in the nearby town. Her letters came home, but Adisa burned them. Years passed. Nana became a teacher, then a headmistress, then a district education officer. People started saying, "She's the pride of Kigundu." People across the district began to speak Nana's name with admiration. "She's sharp, that one. A girl with a future. She builds schools the way others build gossip." At community meetings and church gatherings, her story came up often. How a poor girl from Kigundu rose from nothing. How she now trained teachers and sent children to school who had never dreamed of it. The village elders nodded with pride. Her former teachers beamed when they spoke of her. Even the chief mentioned her name once, saying, "She honors the soil she came from." But whenever the words reached Adisa's compound, carried by neighbors or murmured over fences, she would stiffen, arms folded, lips tight with something that was neither pride nor pain. "She's nothing to me," Adisa would say, without looking up. "Let the world clap if it wants. It means nothing here." Sometimes she'd spit on the ground after saying it, as though the very thought left a bad taste in her mouth. No matter how high Nana climbed, how many children she helped, or how often she returned quietly to repair the old family house, Adisa's heart remained closed, like a gourd with no opening, sealed by years of resentment and the ghosts of her own regrets. Neighbors pitied her. "She should be proud," they whispered, "but some wounds, they choose to bleed forever." And even when Nana was honored by the district governor and her name painted on the school gate, Adisa would only mutter, "Stubborn girl, thinks success erases her shame." But Nana no longer came seeking her mother's praise. She had learned that some hearts are too full of stones to hold water, and love, even when deserved, is not always returned. As Nana's name grew beyond Kigundu, appearing in district newsletters, spoken by headmasters at conferences, and whispered proudly by villagers, Mosi watched from the sidelines, never asking for recognition. But every time her name was mentioned at the market, he smiled behind his sawdust-streaked beard. He simply nodded and kept carving, but his eyes held a warmth deeper than words. He never bragged, never claimed credit, but in the quiet of the evening, he would take out a small wooden box, the same one where he kept Nana's first math certificate, a ribbon from her graduation, and the newspaper clipping of her promotion. He would open it, run his fingers over the worn paper, and whisper to himself, "You did well, my child, you did well." His pride in her was not loud, it was the kind that filled a man's chest and softened his soul, the kind that lasts forever. One morning, as Adisa rose to light the fire, she found her fingers stiff, swollen at the knuckles, refusing to close around the matchbox. She hissed in frustration, thinking it was just the morning chill. But by evening, her knees ached and her breath came shorter than usual. Within weeks, the woman who once stormed through the compound like a whirlwind began moving slower, leaning heavily on the wall as she walked. The villagers noticed. Her once sharp voice grew hoarse. The harshness remained, but now it came wrapped in coughs and winces. Some said it was age. Others said it was bitterness eating her from the inside. She stopped attending church. The laughter that used to echo through her insults disappeared. She sat on the stool outside her hut for hours, staring into the dust like she was looking for something she'd lost long ago. Her skin grew sallow, her frame thinned. Her pride kept her from asking for help, even when it became clear she couldn't manage on her own. Nana heard from a neighbor during one of her visits home. "Your mother's not well. It's like the wind has left her bones." So, Nana, carrying a small basket of fruits and medicine, went to the house she had once left with nothing but a sack. Inside, the air was stale. Her mother's bedding was rumpled, the floor unswept, and the once proud woman lay on a mat, her eyes sunken, her body trembling with fever and stubbornness. Nana knelt beside her. "I've come to help," she said gently, placing a hand on Adisa's arm. Adisa turned her face sharply toward the wall, flinching as though the touch burned her. She said nothing, not even Nana's name. Nana bathed her silently, wrung out the wet cloth, and changed her mother's soiled wrapper. Still, no word, not a glance, just the tight set of a jaw that had never softened for her. Even as the days grew shorter and her breath shallower, Adisa refused to acknowledge her daughter's presence, as if dying without forgiveness gave her the last word. Neighbors whispered, "She still hates her? After everything the girl has become?" But Nana never raised her voice, never asked why. She cleaned, she sat, she waited, because some women learn to mother, even the ones who never mothered them. And when Adisa died one grey morning, face turned stubbornly away, her lips never having spoken Nana's name again. The daughter she scorned covered her with a clean sheet and whispered, "Even in your silence, I loved you." Nana buried her with dignity, no tears, only silence. And Mosi, older now, hands slower, whispered at the grave, "Even a storm dies eventually, but the seeds it scatters still grow." Nana went on to build a school in the village, not a grand institution of cement and marble, but a warm, sunlit place nestled under the hill, where acacia trees bowed gently in the breeze, and children's laughter filled the air like music. The walls were painted in soft earth tones, the windows wide to let in light and air, and every corner of the school whispered hope. She named it Tree of Quiet Strength. People asked her once why she chose that name. Because not all strength shouts, she said. Some strength holds you up without ever needing to be seen. At the heart of the school's courtyard stood a tall mango tree, the same kind that once shaded her young body as she studied by moonlight. Its bark, rough and weathered, bore a hand-carved inscription in small, neat lettering. To my father, who spoke through kindness, not noise. Children often ran their fingers across the words, not fully understanding but feeling the weight of them. Teachers told the story behind the carving, of a girl who rose in silence, and of a man who loved without needing to be loud. And though many still remembered Adisa's fury, her voice like a whip, her absence of tenderness, the daughter she never claimed, it was Nana's story that lived in the songs the children sang, in the knowledge passed through the classrooms, in the joy of learning beneath a mango tree. And above all, it was Mosi's love, quiet, patient, enduring, that took root in the soil of Kigundu, blooming each time a child found courage in silence and strength in softness. Because some legacies are not carved in stone, they are carved in people,